opportunities? Maybe you want to even speak to that.
I think that it's important to think about the community. That's the first word, right? Community Preservation Act. And what is the community? We have a very vibrant and multi-layered city. We have lots of different stakeholders. We have different wards. Even within a ward, there are multiple constituencies, as you all know. So I think it's really important when you have a project in front of you to really think through, how is this going to add to the city? As you said, taxpayer money can't be frittered away. It has to be done very thoughtfully. I think last year, the CPA, because they were operating underneath a double windfall, because they had 2 years of taxes to be able to spend in one funding cycle because of the way that the CPC had been set up and started, it was possible to fund almost every project that came forward. This year, there's way more asks than funding available. It's going to require some tougher conversations and some open minds and some distilling of the values of the CPC. How do we decide when there's more asks than funding to give? What are the priorities? I think it is important to think about how we can address the needs of the community at large across all constituencies.
Okay, great. Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, sounds good. Anybody else have any other questions? All right, seeing none, I will entertain a motion.
I can make a motion that we report back to the full city council that we did interview the candidate and that she has the credentials necessary, and the city council will take their final vote at our next regularly scheduled meeting.
Sounds good. So all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so what happens now is you made it through the process of the Public Service Subcommittee. So now at our next scheduled city council meeting, this will come up underneath the report of public service. And I see no issue with that. And so you get moved on from that, then you have to get sworn in from our city clerk. Do you have any questions for us?
No, sir.
All right, well, sounds good. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And Meg, I know Councilor Sullivan's position on Lynch, so we're not going to talk until after we vote next week.
I do want to give some housekeeping here to all of our friends and family at home that are celebrating the Jewish holiday Yom Kippur. We want to say Happy New Year to you. Tonight, Councilor Lisi cannot be with us, so I just want to let everybody know that she would be here, but she cannot. So having said that, I think what we're going to do, so our item number 2, we have the interviews of the applicants for the Whiting Street Reservoir Study Committee. So what I think what we should do is probably bring everybody that's applied into the chambers inside the rail here, and then we'll go through an introduction. Myself and Councilor McGivern will ask a question or two. Then we'll open it up to the makers of the order, Councilor Bartley and Councilor Sullivan, and they can go ahead with that. So having said that, I make a motion to take that item off the table.
So moved.
All in favor? Aye. Guys have it. So all the applicants, come on in.
Just grab any seat. The mics are activated when you push the button in the
Go
middle
live.
where it says push, and you see a green light.
All right, so while you guys are settling in, this is a very important subcommittee that Councilor Sullivan and Councilor Bartley put forward. This is obviously a very beautiful spot. This is a very good committee to be on. Just so the people at home, the Whiting Reservoir Study Committee shall study the needs, possibilities, and resources of the city regarding the most economic and advantageous use of the land up at the reservoir. The scope and purpose, it's 4 pillars. One is recreational activities such as biking, hiking, snowshoeing, that sort of thing, country skiing. Also revenue producing opportunities such maybe as zip lining or bottling the water up there, and also maybe trying to get the adjacent land, acquisition of that. And the last one is partnering opportunities with abutters and educational institutions. So having said that, what makes up the committee? The membership. The city council, we are allotted 3 positions. Those are at-large positions. One position lasts 1 year, second position lasts 2 years, third position lasts 3 years. Then also the mayor gets one pick, then the water commissioner or his designated person gets a person, conservation director or a designee, and also the director of planning and economic development will get one as well. Public Works will get one, and one member or the director of the Department of Public Parks and Rec. So that consists of a 9-person board. So having said that,
Sure. Chairman, can I make a suggestion?
of course,
If you don't mind.
don't mind at all.
In the interest of fairness and time, perhaps we can get each candidate 2 or 3 minutes, whatever they need to introduce themselves, tell us all why you want to serve on this committee, and if you have any interested ideas that you might want to offer to the committee. And that way we don't have to go around and ask the same question to everybody, but during your 2 to 3 minute introduction, we can learn more about you and be able to bring that back to the full city council.
Why don't you go in order that we have?
Sure.
All right, so excellent idea, Councilor McGivern. So first, Mr. Craven. Mr. Craven, thank you for wanting to be on this. If you could just push that button, make sure the green light's on. Just give us your name, your address, and your...
I guess it was on. Harry Craven, 28 Liberty Street. I've been up at the Mount Tom Reservation, Mount Tom. I'm going to speak more like Jimmy Curran here, not that eloquent young lady before me, because
Fine.
I can't compete with that. I'm very, very fond of the Whiting Street Reservoir area, the whole ridge down, all the way through down to West Springfield, down to the Ashley Ponds, and all the way up through the reservation. And I kind of coined the phrase probably 10 years ago with a friend of mine that this area is Holyoke's National Park, and we better not screw it up. And I want to be on this committee to make sure that does not happen. It's been good for recreating up there through all the years. You've had the ski area, you've had golf courses, 3 different golf courses that I can remember. We've also taken water out for, the reservoir, our citizens, and still being able to go around these places and bike ride, hike, cross-country ski, even as far as, camping out. I camped out up there when I was at the age where you want to go camping out and have a couple of drinks. So I did that as well with my friends early on, and that was a great experience as well. And I also remember going through Mountain Park. We used to go from our home, which I lived on Jefferson Street at that moment, and we would walk from Jefferson Street up Northampton Street, up the old trolley road through the Mountain Park area, and continue on even before the ski area was there, and just had a great time. And I had a good time with it. My kids I brought up there, and now my grandkids are doing the same thing with me, and I want to see that continue in perpetuity. Thank you.
So my 2 questions are basically, thank you for that. What do you see the 5 and 10-year plan of the reservoir?
That's a good question. At this point, I don't have an answer. I'd like to see some, more recreation, rather than the passive recreation now when you go up there on your own. I can foresee, other things going on there, like, maybe that zip line, but all these take manpower or women power. Well, we can't say manpower anymore, I guess. But it also takes, the people to police it. I mean, there's a lot of money that needs to be spent if you're going to be doing anything other than passive recreation. But as far as I'm concerned, it's all on the line. I mean, I'd be welcome to any of that if we can possibly do it. And as far as an area being able to pay for itself, I don't see that happening, that whatever money's got to be spent on the dam at the reservoir is going to cost, I'm hearing like $2 million. There's no way you're going to have a zip line up there and we're going to make $2 million in the next 10 years on that, because that's just not going to happen. But There's many, many parks that don't pay for themselves, so I don't think it necessarily has to pay for itself, but we need to develop a plan so something will pay for it.
Joe?
Harry, I know the Meg who spoke earlier was an eloquent speaker, but you just spoke from your heart. And when you speak from your heart, you say wonders as to who you are and what you want to do. And I think you answered all the questions we need to hear. So I'm going to ask you one question. Can you name those 3 golf courses without showing your age?
Yeah, Wyckoff Country Club, and it was Wyckoff Park Country Club.
Yep.
You got it was the Broadview.
Yep.
And the Holyoke Country Club.
Yeah, I knew I wouldn't trip you up on the Broadview.
That was another drinking place.
Thank you.
Any other counselors?
No, that's
Okay,
all.
well, thank you so much. All right, so moving along, Mr. Haarmann.
Hi, my name's Kevin Haarmann. Grew up in Holyoke, went to Holyoke schools, walked around all the reservoirs pretty much all my life. Mount Tom, I'd love to see the reservoir stay a reservoir, stay an open space. No housing. I think maybe a look park type of a deal. Picnic areas, maybe open it up to fishing. Zip line's a great idea. Just keep it open, keep it up for hiking, keep open to people.
All right, so to mix it up a little bit, could you ever see residential housing up there?
I wouldn't want to, no. I think that would just destroy it.
Okay, Councilor McGivern?
Thank you, Kevin, and thank you. And I think even if anybody wanted to see residential housing, it'd be very difficult to put it because although it's no longer online drinking water, I doubt, and probably never will be, it's always going to be considered drinking water. And who knows, someday down the
Still
road.
considered a reservoir though, isn't it?
It's still considered a reservoir, that's correct. Yeah, so we do have to protect that. So I don't think we could do housing right near it. There is some available land above above the land that's controlled by the city, by the water department, which could be developed. Would you be okay with that? It's not a very large piece.
I'm not sure where you're talking about, but I mean, if it was possible, I'd rather see it be acquired by the reservoir and add it to more open space. I mean, it is a beautiful area up there. I'd hate to see it get ruined.
Thank you. Good answer. Thank you.
Any other counselors? Mr. Sullivan?
So thank you, Kevin. I'm going to stay on the housing subject for a minute. If there was, as Councilor McGivern suggested, a small section, and that could be traded for a much larger section. And I don't know what the numbers are. The two things I'd look for here is, as far as the committee goes, you may, if you were to learn from the water department itself, all right, that there was a piece available, all right, that could be traded for another much larger piece. So the actual acquisition of properties for the reservoir would be vastly greater than what it is right now. Is that something you're open to at least looking and considering the aspects of?
Consider it. I mean, not knowing where the lands are. You know.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I'd look at it.
So you are open to discussion on it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay,
I
thank you.
mean, it's, again, and not knowing where these lands are that you're talking about. But
Right,
yeah.
well,
talk about it.
this is why I think it's important we get a committee
Oh, yeah, no, I
together.
definitely
and that
open.
everybody looks,
Especially if it would increase the land that is there.
correct. Yep.
Okay, well, thank you very much, sir. Moving along, Mr. Kip Foley.
My name is Kip Foley. I live on Pleasant Street in Holyoke, a longtime resident. I have 25 years experience as an entrepreneur, starting a business from scratch. I've served on a couple of other boards in the city, HEDIC, which is the Economic Development Board. I'm currently on the Community Preservation Committee. I was on the Innovation District Task Force many years ago. And I think the reason that I have put my name forward as a potential committee member of the Reservoir Study Committee is I think that my experiences and the skill set that I have developed over my career kind of lends itself to having an understanding of a really special resource, in this case a natural resource, really one of the jewels of the city, but having an open mind about how you may be able to more efficiently or effectively look at that resource and manage it. And very similar to, having an idea or piece of equipment and other assets in a business and looking at how do you deploy those assets in an effective way. Having said that, I would be open to really anything as far as at the beginning studying pros, cons. There's obviously things that would be concerns initially with any potential use of the reservoir in a way that's different than it's being used today. But I would say, really, I think a guiding principle has to be up there, do no harm. I mean, I think the status quo there is not so bad. It's a really special place. I think one thing that's a bit of a no-brainer is to maybe increase the accessibility to it, whether it's parking, on either up on 141 or up off of the Mount Tom access road, maybe improving accessibility for people with disabilities, but short of that, I can't see anything that absolutely must happen there. But I would be very much open to, and I think the committee should be open to, any idea, and to really look at this and say, really the first thing would be like, what are all the wildest ideas that anybody can come up with? And then later, step 2 is start crossing off the ones that just don't make any sense at all. And then 3, what do you have left behind? And now let's look at the pros and cons of each of those ideas. So, I think you have a lot of good candidates, and when I saw opportunity to just throw my hat in and say, hey, I would be willing to serve this way. If it's, I think a lot of, I have experience on other committees in the city, and if you are interested in me, doing that, I'd be happy to do it.
Okay, so my question to you, sir, is would you foresee the next 5 years or so allowing fishing up there?
I can't think of, off the top of my head, any reason why not. So, going through discussions, learning more about the cons of that, but from an initial perspective, I can't imagine why not fishing and why not many other things. Why not canoe and kayak? Why not swim? I mean, there may be good reasons.
We'll find out, right?
We find out. I think that's what an advisor committee in a study like this is intended to do. So yeah.
Councilor McGivern?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Kip, I served with you on HEDIC during your years there and watched you on CPA, and certainly your work ethic is exactly not just the way you described it, but I think even better than the way you describe yourself. Your skill set is very interesting because you've never been afraid to think out of the box, which I think you know what I mean, and which I think is important to this because, I've heard this from so far every candidate, protecting this asset is what it's about. I know Mike Sullivan wants a zip line tomorrow, but we have to do it because the zip line or something like of that nature is going to take, someone that is a entrepreneur themselves because they're going to have to invest money. How can your skills as a business owner be able to complement, bringing in some type of investor to do some of the things that are being proposed?
Well, I can tell you that as an entrepreneur, I'm not really interested in getting into the zip line business. So, if there are people there, I mean, I think it's that would probably be private capital, right? I can't imagine it being public funds to do it. So then you start looking at how do you protect the public's interest if you're going to enter into an agreement like that. And I mean, that happens to be a side of a contract that I've been on a lot in my career, working with municipalities. And, you wouldn't, obviously, you need to be concerned about liability and what happens if it's not successful and how do you remove that, and then that's purely like the business side of it. Then I think you would be looking at how do we make sure we don't do any harm to what's here. I can't say I'm a big fan of zip lines, but I have been on a couple of them. And, they're pretty thrilling. I mean, it's beautiful. It's a way to attract people into, we did up at Mount Mansfield in Stowe last summer. And, there were people that were there that were out and that probably wouldn't be otherwise. So maybe it's a way to bring people into that resource that what might not otherwise be there.
I share your thoughts about the zip line, because I still have nightmares about the Alpine slide. Going
Yeah,
down
me
Mount
too.
Tom.
I still have
I
some
had
scars.
friends behind me that like to bump me off the track because I went too slow.
I have scars still on my elbow from where I burned myself coming down on
But
that.
I threw you a little bit of a curveball, and
Yeah.
I think you caught it very well. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other counselors? Mr. Tallman.
Yes, thanks,
By
Kip,
the
for
way,
coming.
the subcommittee recognizes Counselor at-large Peter Tallman has arrived.
Appreciate it.
Delivers.
Kip, thanks for coming down, and I've heard some great things from all the members tonight, and I myself have traveled up there many times as a youth and even now, and feel that the works of the people that really want to keep that the way it is, because it is a beautiful resource that the city of Holyoke has. But down the road, and you stated about, looking at all options, and I like that idea too, to sort of check things off and sort of like do some brainstorming and see what we can do. But, with the land there and with the water under the auspices of the Water Commission, the Water Department, and I'm sure, giving them ideas of what can be done, they're the ultimate decision makers, in what happens up there. But what do you feel can be done to sort of market that area, the reservoir up there, that's maybe not being done now? Because I know there's several hundreds of people, maybe even thousands of people that probably never been up to the reservoir up in that area. Many people from in Holyoke and the surrounding areas. Is there anything that you feel that you could do to sort of market the area to get more people in that area at some time?
Well, I mean, maybe some public transportation, some availability of transportation from here. That's probably the largest barrier. I think, other than that, it's probably, it's a little bit sad to say, but I would imagine there's a large number of people in the city that don't even know that exists and how beautiful it really is up there. So, I don't know what kind of educational opportunities, maybe getting schools up there. But, I do, my experience has been, that parking is an issue, you can get up there and it's not easy to access always. So I think that's something, I mean, if the idea is to try to increase the amount of foot traffic in there, then, I think you need to do something about just, the accessibility of it from a parking and walking into that property. I mean, that would be a change. I mean, one of the, maybe the conflict with that is, one of the really nice things about it is sometimes you can be up there, walk all the way around the reservoir and not see another person, that's, and, so, that this is the two sides of it. And, so that would be a change, and I'm sure some people wouldn't be happy with that. And So, but those are the things, I mean, I think you have to vet. And I think that there's some recent examples in the city about, why, if you're going to do something like this, you really need to engage the entire community and have a discussion about what we're studying and what the options are and why we're looking at. We have tried to do that on the CPA committee. I can't say we've been really very successful at it, unfortunately. So it's hard to do. It's hard to get people to pay attention. But it's, I think in this case, when you can feel the passion about the place. I'm sure there are people very passionately who would say, don't touch anything, don't do anything. I love it just the way that it is. And then there's other people who passionately say, there's whole segments of this city that are never there, and we need to try to encourage greater use.
Yeah.
So.
Thank you.
All right, so, okay. Question?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Councilor Sullivan.
No, just not a question, but a statement, just so everybody knows. As far as zip lining goes, that's one example of the franchise possibilities. Yes, I am into extreme zip lining, but what I'm hoping the committee comes up, what I'm hoping the committee does come up with is dozens of different franchise opportunities where we could bring some revenue, and everybody knows there's not going to be enough revenue to support it, but where we at least get some kind of a beneficial return. All of those, as mentioned earlier, would not only attract, it becomes another thing that attracts people to other businesses and other, whether it's restaurants, everything else in Holyoke. It makes it another tourist spot or a place to, a reason to come to the city. So I think that's important. And also that what I'm hearing so far is that everybody understands the scope of it. It's not to promote any one idea or one solution, but to come together, examine every possibility. We're about to, and as was stated earlier, we're about to spend $2 million up there. If there's some better use we can get out, or more public benefit out of the place.
Okay, so under full disclosure, because Kip and Joe had said about the Alpine slide, I do want to let people know that was my first job. I sat on top of the Alpine slide and said, go. Then waited 45 seconds, then said, go. Did that for 8 hours. So that, I made sure that I wanted to go to college and make sure I didn't have to do that ever again. But
And after I went, he let Terry Gilney go too quick.
okay, so having said that, let's go down the list. I think that Mark Naidorf, is Mark here? Has anybody seen Mark?
No.
No. And Kin is pulled out. So Marlene Connor. Marlene Connor, what say you?
I guess that'll be me.
Yes.
So I am a lifelong Holyoker. I would say you can probably draw a little 3-mile circle around the reservoir and where I've ever lived. So like Harry and I think a lot of other people in this chamber, we've got a lot of hours and miles logged in, hiking and running and taking advantage of the beautiful resources that Holyoke does have. And I came and presented myself to this opportunity because in my professional career, I've spent my life doing community planning, and a lot of the work that I do tends to relate to issues that we've been chatting about tonight, access and making sure that, and education, and making sure that people are aware of opportunities. I do a lot of work in public transportation, and the biggest challenge that area has is that no one ever knows about it. So I think a lot of what this, a lot of things that we would need to do to make this a successful opportunity would be to consider how we educate the community, provide access, and make people aware of some of the resources that we might want to consider. I think there are certainly, it is such a beautiful resource. I'm there, weekly running, and appreciate the fact that I can go up the hill have a nice 4-mile run and go back down the hill, and it's really good. Anyway, so I would like to contribute whatever resources and brain power and community engagement that would make this project successful, and would want to be able to provide that to this group.
Sure, Councilor McGivern.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Both Marlene and Kip, I think, touched upon access and transportation. I think everybody's touched upon access, and I think that's important. And it reminded me about 3 or 4 years ago, our president, Kevin Jourdain, convinced the water department not only to provide access to some open bus trips to our other resource that we don't even think of and most Hoyokers have never seen, and that's our reservoir out in Southampton, the Tycomedy Manhand. I mean, not on the same scale, but I think it puts Quabbin to shame in terms of what we have out there, and the fathers of this city, what they visioned when they bought the land out there and built the reservoir out there, which is our true water supply, which is incredible. But I think it's important, and Marlene, you certainly fall into an area of figuring out ways to find public transportation to get more people up. Maybe the water department will let more people get out to the Manhand, I'm not sure, but David Conti, who's not quite here yet, wasn't happy about that, but he got over it because Kevin convinced him. And I went on both trips, and it was remarkable. The turnout was okay, but it was remarkable what we saw, and the visit out there was incredible. But I think the ideas are flowing here, and I think what this committee is going to do is, answer some of the ideas and protect the resource with or without a zip line, but at the same time open it up so more people can enjoy it. And I think that's, if I understand what Mike Sullivan has been saying, that's exactly what his vision is to get more people to enjoy this incredible asset. But thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Anybody have any questions? No? Okay, well, thank you. Our last person, Mr. Lynch. How are you, sir?
Good. Hi, my name's Mike Lynch. I live on Cherry Hill in Holyoke. And like others here, I grew up in the city. I started running up there, I guess. I was in high school back before it became real popular. And I've logged thousands of runs around there. I've hiked, I've biked, fished. And, I remember the days when fishing was open there, when they had the fountain still in use up there. And I love this place. I think it's the best thing about the city of Holyoke. And the reason I came out here, I retired from a long career in the public power industry and moved back to Holyoke about 7 years ago. And like I said, I love that place. And I share the concerns of other people. I think the biggest problems there are access. And I think I didn't really come up with a plan or anything before I came here tonight, but I think there is a lot of opportunity to increase the recreational opportunities up there. I know they've just about drained all the water out of there because of the problem that's up there with the dam, I guess. But once they fill that place back up, there's lots of things that could be done there. And I think it's a shame that, I like going up there. I like being the only guy up there running around. But, I think that it's a wonderful resource, and an effort really should be made to get other people living in the inner city or whatever that could get up there and, enjoy that resource. And I think that the idea of having school kids up there and things like that, field trips up there. I know there used to be field trips when I was in elementary school with Miss Beitzel, if anybody remembers her. But, I think that, and I'm certainly open to any ideas about how, what could be done to help make that work. I'm certainly not in favor of putting up houses on the shoreline. But, again, I would like to keep an open mind about what the possibilities are up there and what the city could do. And I know that money is tight, and I know that oftentimes people take a short view of things and will chase the quick dollar and give something up that probably shouldn't be given up. So when I heard about this, I thought I'd throw my hat in the ring and hopefully add something to the group if that's your will. Thank you.
Councilor McGivern?
Mike, is there anything, any skill set that you see that you can offer, to this type of group? Because I think what you said is very important. And, you certainly have the understanding and of what we're after. Is there anything that you can bring to the table that might be helpful?
Well, I've been involved with, utility projects and project management, that type of work my whole life. But I'm not a political guy. I've never participated in politics or anything like that. But,
You're a lucky guy.
Yeah.
Trust us.
Perhaps. But, yeah.
Mr. Chairman, do you think we might take a minute just to offer anybody a rebuttal moment if they have anything they want to say or add to their thoughts? Or
Absolutely. And also, if anybody knows, how many miles is the reservoir, and how does that compare to our other one? Are they both 3.5?
Yeah, 3.5 and. Yeah, actually, there's 2 pieces, so.
depends how you use the spillway.
It depends how you run, which way you come in and go out.
Yeah.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions or comments or final thoughts?
Sure.
Michael?
I just want to remind Mr. Lynch that he played football in high school and I ran cross country. And our home course was up at Ashley Reservoir. It was Holyoke Catholic's course up at Whiting Reservoir. So you were running with the wrong team.
I was just running by myself.
So if Councilor Sullivan or Councilor Bartlett want to say anything, this is your time. This is your order. Very good order. Shoot.
Okay, well, thank you, everybody. I haven't met all of you, but I've met most of you. So thank you so much for being here. This order is really, with the last meeting, just let me step back. We passed a resolution in this body and in support of the gas and electric. I wrote it, but Councilor Sullivan tampered it down and removed the saltier parts of it. In this case, this is really Councilor Sullivan's idea, but he came to me just because we're friendly, but I think I have some skills in writing ordinance and writing language like that. So I helped him put together his thoughts. So this is really his idea, but we wanted to put it into ordinance because this body has significance, and we put it into law. There's real backing behind this body. And what you heard tonight from the first person, and all of us here, maybe not all of us, but most of us here are aware of this Community Preservation Act because most of us are property owners and we pay the tax and the money goes into this enormous pot, which is pretty sizable now. Perhaps some of those monies can be allocated for that area. But that's down the road. What I'm hopeful that this body will do there was a study in this very issue some 30 years ago. The study's over at the library. I'll make sure that their copies are provided, clean copies are provided for any of the committee members or anyone who wants to volunteer or learn about this. It's maybe 100 pages, 110 pages. It should be reviewed because there's that. And then your own expertise for walking that land, much more than I've ever done, for sure. I'm just a skier myself, but that's beside the point. The beauty of that and the significance of it to Holyoke, because you've been here, there's significance to that property. I think only from I can't speak for Mike, but from my perspective, there isn't one thing. It's not economic development. It's just finding out what opportunities there are. But once you do that, boy, there's a long process between there and here and there. I mean, this is going to require an act of the general court to move this out of the status it's in, and if there is a development piece that you see, the general court's going to have to be, and the water commissioner is going to have to be very involved in this. So this is a political process. I think if there's groundswell support at the local level, you're not going to have a lot of controversy in Boston, but it has to go to Boston. There's no way around that. So And the last thing I'll say, Mr. Chair, well, two things. One is, I really like the way the chair set this up. I'm just most appreciative for, because this is kind of innovative. Normally, we have people come in and go out, and I just like this so much better. Sitting around, we can hear everybody talk, and this shouldn't be controversial. You're all volunteers, and I think one person's ideas generates conversation. And I know you're all thoughtful people, and you'll be, whomever is chosen, whether you're chosen on the committee or not, it's just a vote, and the vote is going to be what it is for a year or two or three. But I think this committee is probably going to have a 3 or 4 year, 5 year lifespan. I think beyond that we'll have some ideas. The only other thing I'm going to say is what I said earlier. We cannot move this city forward unless there are committed, dedicated, caring volunteers who show up to meetings. And so you've evidenced by that. But tonight, how we're going to shake this out next Tuesday is how we're going to shake it out. But your willingness to serve really speaks volumes for the kind of people you are. And I just want to say thank you.
Councilor Tolman.
Yeah, I just want to thank Councilor Sullivan and Councilor Bartley for bringing this forward. I mean, I think it's important that we have this study committee for the reservoir and, what the future of Holyoke brings for that area of the city. It is really from dedicated people as yourselves that really put up the time and into what goes on in the future of our city. I mean, we're elected officials, we make decisions, but it's actually the people that do the work, the volunteers and the people that are dedicated, that been part of this community for years, that really have a say in what really goes on here. And I'm really grateful to my colleagues for putting this forward, and looking forward to the years ahead and trying to get some movement in what we can do with that area. And I know it's going to take a lot of time, a lot of hours, and a lot of sweat to try to find out what the best scenario is for that area of our city. But by you stepping up, it's something that I'm really proud of. So I want to thank you for the stepping forward tonight, and whoever decides to be on this committee, we'll do the job that needs to be done. So thank you so much.
Excellent summary. So thank you. So thank you all for coming in and wanting to have this position. So what happens now is this is going to be complied with, and at our next city councilor meeting, the city council will be asked, each councilor will be asked to vote for 3 people. And so I would encourage all of you guys, if you haven't already, to reach out to the city council and indicate that you want to be on this. But having said that, one last opportunity. Does anybody have any questions?
Right here.
Councilor, you have a question?
No, one last comment.
Sure.
Thanks. I just want to let everyone know that right now I'm very pleased with the group that I've seen come forward here. I wish we could have 5 choices, because I think I've heard 5 great responses here. And I want everybody to know, myself, I've got no predetermined ideas or goals or objectives here. What I want to see, and what I've heard from this group right here, is exactly what I wanted to see from this committee, is a group of people that are going to look at every option, every possibility, every scenario, and come up with the best solution for the city. I want to thank you all for being here, and I wish we could take all 5.
Thank you. So do I entertain
I
a
can
motion?
make a motion, Mr. Chairman, that not only is the order complied with, but to let the city council know that we have 5 incredible candidates. And in the echoes of the words of Councilor Bartley and Sullivan, I wish there was some way we could get all 5 into the committee, and maybe there is, but that has to be really thinking out of the box quick. But thank you, everyone, for coming. The city council will hear what you told us this evening. City councilors who are not here this evening probably are watching at home. And Councilor Leahy talked about the open meeting law and asked everybody out in the audience to say they're taping us. He forgot to tell you that we're taping us, and we're live, and it will be re-shown because Holyoke Media has taken over, and they like to show these committee meetings multiple times. But thank you for applying, and best of luck to you.
Sounds good. Thank you very much. Okay.
On the motion.
On the motion to comply with. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, the ayes have it. Was that 9 holes? There's always 18?
Yeah.
What about,
The 60's going up there. We wanted a caddy because it was torn up because of 91. And they laughed at us, but they There's a couple of golf carts, like, go over that hole and hit all you want.
What about the Broadview? Was that 9 holes? Okay. He just said that, yeah. All right, so moving along, so we have an item on the table, City Council review the mayoral appointee of Matteo Riodato. Did I say that correctly? Okay, so I make a motion to take that off the table?
So moved.
Ayes have it. Come on in here, sir. As you've seen with the previous interviews that we've had, what we're going to do is you're going to introduce yourself, you're going to give us some background to why you want to be on the Fairfield Avenue Commission, Historic Commission, and then any city councilor here could entertain any questions. And my first question is, your resume, your curriculum vitae says you live in Amherst? It says 25 East Street, Amherst.
Oh,
That's
that
where I
must
got
be
it from.
an old
From you.
copy of my. I don't live in Amherst. I live in 56 Fairfield Avenue. in
Oh, okay.
Holyoke.
That's why I was just intrigued.
Oh, that's my. Oh, does it say 25 East Drive?
It does.
That's my work address.
Oh, interesting.
That's,
Okay.
Yeah, that's what we do on academic CVs actually. Yeah, so I moved to Holyoke in June. I bought a house in Fairfield Avenue. And the reason I want to serve in that committee is that I believe that when we live in these old historic houses, we don't just own them, but we preserve them for whoever comes after us, so that they can enjoy the history that these houses have and that this whole neighborhood has in the same way that we enjoyed it because someone else preserved it for us. And I think the commission definitely needs some help. It has a number of vacant positions, and actually when I looked it up on the website, the last minutes were from 2013, so I actually thought that the commission didn't exist anymore. And then I found out that it still does, and it has a number of vacancies, and since I live in that neighborhood, I wanted to help.
Sounds good. Any councilors have any questions, Joe?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Matteo, thank you for applying, and I've never quite seen a resume like this. I mean, it's 9 pages?
Yeah, sorry about that.
That's okay.
I was asked for one 2 hours ago, and
Okay,
that's
I've
all
always
I
told
had.
resumes you want to keep the 1 or 2 pages, but I think this is incredible what you have here.
Academics are like to show off, I guess.
I think you have a good idea of what an historical district is, and certainly works hand in hand with the historical commission and understanding the age of the city. We have a lot of historical assets that we want to protect, and the district is one of our unique ones, the Fairfield Avenue. Two questions. One is, as far as the Fairfield Avenue district goes, what are your thoughts about outside work on the homes?
Oh, yeah. That's tough. I mean, each home obviously is owned by different people, and we cannot force them to maintain them all in the same way that other people may be able to afford. But there's some homes that definitely need more work than others, and I hope somehow we can, in some way, to help the homeowners in at least guiding them into choosing materials and projects for renovating that are such that they maintain the spirit of the district.
Okay. When you say guiding to choosing materials,
Well,
is there
helping
any-
them and
No, helping is great, because I think, there are people with, those homes are costly to maintain, I'm sure you know.
Right, yeah.
So I understand that part. But do you believe in restrictions as to what materials should be or certain things you cannot do?
I do. I think that, in order to maintain the spirit, we need to put some restrictions, and there are some restrictions already in place of what can actually be done externally in those to those houses.
Okay. Second question. Occasionally, the committee itself has done work outside of the district.
Right.
Was involved with the Mata Della Rosa issues and was involved in other areas. And occasionally that happens, being the fact that it's an organized committee which can handle certain things like that. What are your thoughts about citywide, where it wouldn't be a district where everybody's bought into it and understands the rules and regs, but how do you work citywide to preserve historical buildings and at the same time recognize, the better good of the entire city?
Well, yeah, so the commission, this one is obviously only tasked with the local historic district. There is a historical commission that is, I believe, is citywide and we can work with. I think that it should definitely be possible to either extend our local district to other neighborhood, to other close streets, for example, but also to investigate the possibility to create other small districts or individual buildings, either using ordinances that are similar to the one that protects Fairfield Avenue or more tailored to whatever the situation is for these buildings or areas.
Thank you.
Any other councilors have any questions? Councilor Sullivan?
Sure. I noticed on your resume, Yahoo Research Barcelona.
Yeah.
Were you actually in Barcelona?
Yep.
Good. Councilor McGivern's point, working outside of the district would be nice. We have failed in the attempts with saving one church. We've got some others that are in danger. Did you get a chance to tour La Familia Sagrada?
Yes, I did tour La Sagrada Familia. Yeah, I lived in Barcelona for 3 months when I was an intern at Yahoo Research, doing research on algorithms for web analysis.
Well, we don't have anything to compare with
Yeah.
Familia Sagrada, but we do have some beautiful, beautiful structures that are in need of some
Yeah, I mean,
some people that can take an interest and have the knowledge.
Yeah, I come from a medieval town in Italy, so I know about how much it's important to preserve and maintain for future generations. So, and I hope that, I'm sure that there is more recent history, but still history that needs to be preserved here, and I would like to do my part in that.
That's good to hear. Thanks.
Any other questions? No? So, Joseph?
I just want the record to show that Councilor Sullivan has a unique understanding and knowledge of churches outside of Holyoke. It's something that, shut up, Joe.
I don't know where you're going with this, but okay. Anyway, so what happens now is we move forward. Joseph and I will confirm this. So you're going to go in front of the full city council meeting. You don't need to show up.
Okay.
We're just going to give kind of your 9-page background, and then we're going to move from there. So I see there's no issues with moving forward from there. So the following day or any day after, you have to come to the city clerk's department and do the oath. Then you can start going to meetings, and hopefully you can maybe plan a meeting, because if the last minutes are 2013, you guys have to get a little bit more active.
Yeah, there are meetings.
There are.
The minutes weren't posted.
Oh, okay. All right, well, thank you. Do you have any questions for us?
No, thank you very much.
All right, well, have a good
Make a
night
motion
now.
that we send the order been complied with, that the mayor's appointment does have the credentials, and bring it forward to the full city council.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Thank you, sir. Have a good night. Okay. All right, so now I think what we're going to do I think what we should do is take item number 5.
Make a motion to group together items 5, 6, 7,
and 8.
and 8.
All right, so I will second that motion. All in favor?
Aye.
The ayes have it. So I'll just read these quickly. Item 5, McGee, Burgos, Anderson-Burgos. Order that the City Council invite the Public Service Committee, David Conti, the Water Commissioners, the Fire Department, to discuss hydrant issues that took place on Fairfield Ave. Please provide any info on plans in place to address the water flow fires and if piping is bad in area. Also, please provide committee with complete list of other areas of the city, like Fairfield, and what the timeline are in place for to fix such piping issues. Currently, the Water Department has a bond for addressed several capital campaigns. Is the bond sufficient to cover the hydrant piping needs, or what funding would be required? So this is basically asking what funding. The next one, Leahy, myself, order that the City of Holyoke Water Department access each fire hydrant citywide and submit a detailed report to the City Council for discussion in the Public Service Committee. And I found out there's 2,000 hydrants, so that's a lot of hydrants. The next item, 7, ordered, it's introduced by myself, James Leahy, order that the City of Holyoke Water Department become in front of the Public Service Committee to discuss their findings of their hydrant study. And lastly, item number 8, also introduced by me, Councilor Leahy, order that the superintendent of the Holyoke Water Department and the mayor come before the Public Service Subcommittee to discuss the large amounts of complaints regarding discolored tap water throughout this city. And this is actually nothing to do with the fire. This is just over the course of the last several months on the Hello Holyoke Forum, there's been people complaining, people actually indicating with pictures and that sort of thing of discoloration in the water. So I make a motion to take all these off.
Take a motion to take off the table for discussion.
All in favor? Aye. The ayes have it. So I see our good commissioners, our 3 good commissioners, and Mr. Conti, and also our good fire chief, Chief Pond. Come on down. Ray, would you mind moving over? Would you mind moving over?
Hey, is number 4 not here?
I didn't know there was enough seats, but there's enough room for us. That could be him over there. Should we do that first?
Just ask, because if we do it real quick, it's an alternate.
I'm just looking over the agenda very quickly. There's some little homework before we start. Is Marco Crescentini?
Yeah, Marcos,
Where is he?
Mr. Chairman, Marcos was here. They had a meeting of the Historic Commission, so he had to leave to go to it.
Okay, why don't we lay on the table and see if he can come back later?
And do you know this gentleman?
Yes.
I mean, this is an alternative appointment. Is this something that would you feel comfortable giving a short synopsis and maybe?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean,
So before we start, gentlemen, maybe make a motion to table this for a second.
If we could table the water department orders for
be
30
brief.
seconds.
And make a motion to take item number 4 off the table. City Council review, Mayor appointee Marco to serve as an alternate to the Historic Commission for the City of Holyoke. And I'll turn it over to you, Councilor Sullivan.
yeah, he's been on the, attending the Historical Commission meetings. I believe he's a member of it right now. I guess he's stepping down as to become an associate member. He's also been on the CPA and very active. He's very knowledgeable guy. He does his homework, comes prepared for the meetings. I think he's a very good candidate, and we'd be privileged to have him on there.
Okay, having heard that from Councilor Sullivan, and also knowing that he has worked with the CPA, so he's already been in front of the City Council, and he's already been on the Historic Commission, I have no issues with appointing him or confirming the appointment.
So moved.
All in favor? Ayes have it. So I make a motion to take up off the table item number 5, 6, 7, 8.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes, the ayes have it. So, Chief? Yes, sir. All right, so Todd and Juan aren't here, but their orders are pretty similar to my orders, except for the one with the discoloration. I have talked to you offline about that with the Amazon pipes and what have you, but let's just maybe address that one first. So introducing Superintendent David Conti, talking about the discoloration of water.
You want to talk about the discoloration first?
Let's do that one first.
Okay. Some of the problems that we've encountered around the Homestead area avenue, where we've been receiving a lot of dirty water complaints, have been a result initially from the construction that's taken place around the former Atlas Copco building. They are doing some system upgrades for the new Amazon distribution center, and there is work that's taking place that is causing a disruption to the system in that area. Now, that system is the high service system. It's more or less a residential system. There are 3 water systems on Homestead Avenue, but Atlas Copco, or the new Amazon facility, is connected to the high service system, which is the primary feed for the residents on Homestead Avenue and Westfield Road. Now, years back, there was some improvements that were done to allow for the construction of the Kelly Way, where there was a larger 16-inch commercial main that was constructed that runs down across that area. and that feeds all of Babala Farm Road around the hotel and up on Kelly Way. So one of our intentions was to get the owner, Andrew Crystal, to reconnect the system for the Amazon onto the high-pressure main, get them off the residential main, so that we can reduce the amount of discolored complaints that these residents are receiving. The other issue that we're running into in that particular area is that there are companies that their underwriters are requiring them to conduct flow tests for their fire suppression systems as a insurance requirement without our notification. And what's happening is they're flowing these hydrants and flowing their systems without our knowledge, and it's disrupting the system. Now, that has happened at the pediatrics building. It's happened at Devonshire. It's been an ongoing problem in that particular area. We met with the fire department.
Wait, can you just back up a second? So I can understand. So insurance companies are actually touching our hydrants without authorization?
Sometimes they're operating our fire hydrants, sometimes they're actually operating their testing facility, which anytime anything is flowed at that type of volume, it affects the system. And we receive dirty water complaints after the fact, and we're out there trying to chase the area, because once there's a disruption, it moves through the system relatively quickly. So what we came up with a plan with the fire department, and we revisited that plan, and what we need now is we need to require these companies not only to provide notification to the fire department, but also provide the water department with the dates and times in which they conduct these flow tests, so that we can have our personnel out there to address this issue before it works its way through the system, and people like the residents on Homestead Avenue come home and they're faced with discolored water. But I wanted to explain a little bit about the Amazon facility, because that is going to be, if we don't get Amazon to connect to the commercial line, that's going to be an ongoing problem. That's going to be more frequent for the people on Homestead Avenue. So that was a critical step that the board had required me to sit down. We sat down with the fire department, the planning board, the building inspector, the tenant for Amazon, and O'Connell Development, to require them to make these changes, and they were very accommodating. So that is in the works. But that's primarily the reason for the problems that we're receiving out in that particular area, out on the Homestead Avenue and the Lower Westfield Road area. Now, the other problem that we had up in the Highlands was a result of, number one, we had a contractor who broke a water main while installing a catch basin. That was up on George Street, corner of George and Vadnais. And by the time we got up there, the extent of the break caused discoloration in the entire area on that particular day. So we had to isolate the leak, and what we did was, by isolating the leak, we had to shut down a much larger area than we originally wanted to. But there was a major disruption that particular day, and in addition to that, we had a water main break on Beach Street at the daycare facility, and that break we had to repair at night because it required shutting down the 16-inch line, which was going to limit capacity for the hospital. So we had to let that leak run. So those two breaks on that particular day resulted in a tremendous disturbance to the Highland areas and areas along Beach Street. And then immediately after that, we had hydrants opened, illegally opened, at the pediatrics facility that we found out after the fact that caused more discoloration up in the Homestead Avenue area. So those are some of the problems we're facing that you've been getting a lot of complaints about. Now, I did ask the commission, or requested permission for the commission, to flush the water system, because that is something that we need to do, flush the entire water system. And the commission had asked me what I felt was best for the department, whether we should conduct that flushing in the spring or the fall, and I recommended in the spring, because flushing the water system this time of year with the leaves on the ground causes flooding of the bases, flooding of the cellars. So we will be out there in the spring, and we will flush the entire water system at that time.
On that note, if you could just back up a second. So from my understanding, just reading through minutes and whatnot, that the water department has not been flushing for the last several years. Now, I also believe that it's a state law to flush every year. Am I correct on that?
It's a requirement to flush annually, yes.
And we've not been doing that?
The last time we flushed was 2017.
And can I ask you why?
The costs associated with the flushing, that was number one. Number two, we lost the individual that oversaw the program. And now we have to retrain our staff as to the manner in which we flush the system. There is actually a procedure in flushing the system. You just can't open fire hydrants. You have to start from the source and work your way out. So we will be doing the flushing this year.
Okay, so I guess maybe everything is intertwined, so we can continue with the conversation. But so having said that, so 2017, you guys stopped flushing the hydrants because of cost. Now, do you think that could be attributed to this Highland, to the what's the name of the street? Fairfield Ave?
No, it has nothing to do with Fairfield Avenue.
So Councilor Sullivan brought in this pipe at one of our meetings. It was like a 10-inch pipe. Am I correct on that? And the amount of growth that was inside of it, there's a word for it. I forget the
Tuberculation.
word. Yeah, because for my reading, that's because hydrants have not been flushed, correct?
No, it's got nothing to do with fire hydrants.
No?
No. You have iron pipe. You have iron pipe in the city that's over 140 years old. And that iron pipe...
140?
Well, let me give you an example. The pipe on Fairfield Avenue was put in 1883. Okay? The second pipe was put in on Fairfield Avenue in 1886. The pipe that was put in on Morgan Street was put in 1886. The pipe that was put in on Pearl Street was put in 1892. Now you take a pipe that's metal and you expose it to acidic water over the period of 50, 60 years, you're going to get a buildup of tuberculation. That's common with all water supplies, all surface water supplies in New England. And then in the 70s, you introduce fluoride to the water, which is an acid, which makes the water that much more aggressive, and you have more growth of tuberculation. Now, the problem is more or less subsided. You're not going to see that creation of tuberculation anymore, because in 1997 we introduced corrosion control into the system with the construction of the new treatment plant.
Say that again, corrosion?
Corrosion control. What we do is we add a pH adjuster, we add an alkalinity adjuster, and we add an inhibitor, a polymer inhibitor for red water. So that is currently underway. So there's not going to be any new growth of tuberculation or reduction in the diameter of the pipe. But again, these pipes that we're talking about are almost 140 years old, and they're originally 6-inch diameter, and you probably have a 1-inch diameter to 2-inch diameter hole in them now. And that's indicative of a lot of areas in the city of Holyoke. Fairfield Avenue is not the worst. There are worse areas.
Okay, I don't want to hog up the whole evening. Anybody else? Councilor McGifford? And also, I have to introduce the good commissioners as well. We have Mr. Harbliss, Mr. Parr Barrett, and Mr. Kevin Jourdain, and we appreciate you guys coming down here tonight. Thank you, and you guys do a great job. Councilor McGifford?
If I could, Mr. Chairman, just before we move on to water pressure, David, just on the way you explained the issues with the water discoloration, it sounds like you got a plan in place to work with both the businesses and the fire department on notification. If that doesn't work, do you think it would be worthwhile exploring a city ordinance that would require a business to do it with a possible consequence if they don't?
I don't understand the question.
If we created an ordinance, a city law that would require a commercial owner that before they did a flow test or before they, even attempted to use the fire hydrant, that they had to notify, the fire department, notify the water department, and if they didn't do that, that there could be a consequence for their lack of notifying.
Chief Pond?
I can answer that for you. And speaking with Mr. Conti, if somebody triggers their sprinkler system for a test, it sets off the alarm system. So before they can even do that, they have to contact the fire department. There's a $10 permit fee, so that we know that they're going to activate the system. Once they trigger that permit, we'll contact the water department and let them know that they're going to trigger their sprinklers. So that's how we're going to work it out.
Chief, do the businesses give you, is it you have to actually see the trigger, or do they notify you in advance that they're going to do it?
On an initial install of a sprinkler system, we check to ensure there's a proper flow and the system is flushed out. Once it's in process or it's in place, then the business owner will annually test the sprinkler system.
I understand, but for the water department to have someone available to make sure it's done correctly to avoid the discoloration of water into the entire neighborhood,
Right.
how do we get the notice to the water department in advance?
They have to pull a permit 24 hours in advance at the
Sorry.
fire department, and then we will notify the water department that there's going to be a sprinkler activation.
Would that work?
It should work. The key is knowing the time and place in which they're going to conduct this test. And if we know that, we can have our staff out there to minimize discoloration and water to the residents in that particular area. So that should work.
But no one should touch a fire hydrant without the water department being present, I would hope.
Not legally, no.
Could help with that.
Yeah, I'll close. So just, I also introduced, I asked the mayor to be here tonight, and he said he had some other issues tonight, so he couldn't make it. But he did say he would go along with the recommendations of you, if you find people. But having said that, a few years ago, the city introduced a phone system, a notification system, that I don't think is being utilized correctly. Generally, we just hear about snow and parking, what side to park on. I think this notification system would be ideal for a place that's getting, a business that's doing a hydrant or whatnot. So that neighborhood, and you can filter it down to the neighborhood. They would know that not to use their water that night. Is that something we can do, or do we have to put that into an ordinance?
We've already met with the mayor, and that was one of his suggestions, that my staff be trained in that notification, to use that system, so that when we have knowledge of discoloration in water, we can notify people in those particular areas. So that is in the works right now.
Well, I'm glad that was one of his suggestions, but I think I filed that order about 3 years ago that every department uses this. For instance, there's a lot of traffic on Bemis when there's doing construction, and they reroute it. About 3 years ago, I had a plethora of phone calls from the constituents, and that neighborhood should have got notified, or anytime there's a flushing, that neighborhood should get notified. So I'm glad that we're 3 years later doing that. Does anybody else have any? Councilor Sullivan.
And just for clarification for the committee and for the public, and if I'm wrong on any of this, Dave, please, get after me. But for a commercial flow test for a building doesn't necessarily involve a fire hydrant at all.
That's correct.
So you're talking about in some of the larger buildings, it's flowing the entire sprinkler system to an outside outlet. So it doesn't necessarily have anything to do at all with a fire hydrant, okay? The flow test of a system. Also, these tests, when you go through the commercial population of the city, you're looking at these, everyone expires on different times. So there's no set, it's not like you have to do this in January of every year or something like that. They're all tagged different. So you're talking about a 365-day cycle here. Also, they can happen at any time in any area.
Yeah. Any other questions? Do you guys have any, gentlemen have any comments?
No, I think the manager stated, with respect to the discoloration, we have other opinions about the Fairfield and the overall scope of the pipe issue. We're going to talk about that in a minute, but on discoloration.
Okay, so on this discoloration, make motions complied
Make a
with.
motion that item number 8 was complied with, and suggest that we file an order to ask the ordinance committee to look in creating an ordinance that would complement necessary consequences for illegal use of fire hydrants and not properly notifying both the water department and fire department.
I hope you have that written down, Ryan, downstairs. I second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Okay, let's move along to, you guys have any opening statements before councilors ask any questions? Regarding
Which issue do you want to talk
the
about?
Fairfield.
The Fairfield Avenue, okay. Situation with Fairfield Avenue, I'll give you a little history on it. Back in the 90s, when the Holyoke Water Works was being faced with a mandate to filter its water supply, the city entered into a consent decree. At that time, they were looking at costs up to $32 million for filtration, and there was also deficiencies that were identified in the West Heights system. At that particular time, it was brought to my attention by the fire department, specifically Deputy Chief Brian Leary, about some of the areas in the city that had capacity issues, okay? One of which was Fairfield Avenue. Okay, so at that time,
Just for the people at home, can you explain what a capacity issue is?
capacity issue is that there is a limited flow available through the fire hydrant as a result of the size of the pipe, not necessarily the size of the condition of the pipe, the water pipe that services the fire hydrant. So at that time, we met with the fire department, and it was upon the deputy chief's recommendation that the water department conduct a program to go out there and identify all the high-capacity hydrants in areas or in throughout the city, so that in the event there's a fire in areas that have limited capacity, the fire department can go to these hydrants and they can use these hydrants to supplement that area. That program involved the painting of the pumper cap or the pumper nozzle white, okay, in the various systems. Now, that was specifically for the high service and low service system, not the West Heights, because the West Heights had improvements that were conducted in the order of $2.8 million, which was approved by the city council back in the 90s. I have specific dates if you want. But at that time, the city moved forward with 3 bonds totaling $24 million, and it resulted in a more than doubling of the water rates. So the commission's position at that time, knowing that there was an issue in Fairfield Avenue, along with other areas in the city, equal to or if not worse, they deferred those expenses for those capital improvements until the bonds matured in 2017. Immediately when those bonds matured in 2017, the commission authorized me to put together a system-wide capital improvement project to address not only the deficiencies in the system, which are the spillway, the construction of a second tank, the McLean Gatehouse, the painting of the tanks, but also infrastructure work. And at that time, I put together a proposal, and it was $24 million. So the commission had asked me to break that into 3 categories, what I thought were the absolute worst of worst areas, highest of priority, then the next priority, and then the lowest of the 3 priorities. All very important and all very critical. All very important and all very critical to the fire protection provided throughout the city's distribution system.
And can I just stop you there and you did a fantastic job. Myself, Kevin, we were on the Finance Show. We were all at those meetings, and that list was fantastic. And I loved how you color quoted it and whatnot. And I just wanted to let you know, everybody know at home, that we saw this list, we approved it. So go forward.
Okay. So at that time, there was other considerations given. There was the CSO project moving forward. There was concerns about the city's ability, bonding capability, and there was also the discussion about new schools. So the department went forward with the worst of the worst for $13.39 million. Now, of that $13.39 million, $5.9 million was assigned specifically to water main work. Okay? That water main work was broken into 3 phases. And losing my train of thought here for a minute. What we did was we broke it into 3 phases, and those 3 phases, I have a plan I just wanted to go over with you. And just for the record, Fairfield Avenue was considered a high priority project, along with Morgan Street and Pearl Street.
Bring this up to the, want to leave it here or bring it up to the committee too?
Let's put it on top of this. If anybody in the audience wants to, feel free to come in and look. Want to take a picture?
Understand that this project is $5.96 million for water main improvements.
More than welcome to come up, anybody.
Will only address 3 miles of pipe in the system.
3 miles.
3 miles. Now, there's 160 miles of pipe in the city's water distribution system. not including the West Holyoke area. There's another 38 miles there. So there's approximately 200 miles of pipe. That $5.96 million addresses three of it. We broke it into quadrants.
Oh, yeah, can you speak into one of the
Oh, yeah,
microphones?
you can't hear me?
No, it's for the people at home.
For the people at home. Okay, all right. So we broke it into three phases, which we thought was a very, very aggressive schedule considering the amount of work here. And we wanted to address the lower wards first because the city's going forward with the CSO, and there's going to be some overlay with regards to construction. And what we don't want to do is we don't want to go in there and have the city rip up roads and then we come in and rip them up right after that. That doesn't make sense from a construction perspective. So we've identified these areas. Now, some of these areas down in the lower wards are as bad, if not worse, than Fairfield Avenue. We got a street actually, Southeast Street, that is so bad that we actually removed the fire hydrants on it, so the fire department couldn't use them. So there are bad areas in the city, and I just want to make sure that you're aware of that, that we've been aware of, that we really, really, need to address in the system. So everything you see down here is phase one, and that is $1.6 million. That is currently being designed as we speak. Construction for phase one is anticipated to go forward spring of 2020. Phase two, which involves Fairfield Avenue, Morgan Street, and Pearl Street, we want to do those as one unit. Phase two is $3.6 million. I'm sorry, $3.4 million. So that involves work or replacement of the water mains in the Fairfield Avenue area, Morgan Street, and Pearl Street. It also involves replacement on Elm Street, a section of Walnut Street, Portland Street, which I'm sure this city council is aware of, having some problems with discoloration on Portland Street, and also Elm Street. Elm Street is a critical component to this project because what Elm Street does is it completes the loop that reinforces all of Beach Street and all the water around Holyoke Hospital. Very important project, very important for Holyoke Hospital. When they did the construction of the new emergency room, we required them to bring a 10-inch line all the way around to Winchester Street, and then we laid from the top of that particular road down to Portland, so that when we go forward with these improvements, we're going to take a 12-inch line off of the 16 on Beach Street and connect it to that loop. And that's going to reinforce everything around the hospital. It's all gravity fed, yes. And then the third phase, which we're not really talking about for $0.96 million, is the Smith's Ferry area. Down there, we're talking Vincent Street, Peltia, Oscar, Springdale. The problem with that area, under this bond, everything you see in yellow is under the $13.39 million bond. That still doesn't address other deficiencies in the water system. There really is a need, and I wanted to stress that, there really is a need for consideration to be given for some other streets because we are faced with similar situations. So the $13.39 million does just more or less satisfies the worst of the worst. But there are still going to be areas going forward that need attention. And that's why I outlined them and wanted to talk to you about that tonight to see if that's something that you would consider supporting if we went forward with that.
Well, let me ask you a question that you and I have talked about a long time ago. One of the concerns that I had was, and you see it time and time again, especially when you have a community that has pipes that are 140 years old. I'm afraid of Mrs. Jones driving down the street and a pipe collapsing and the whole road collapsing. I mean, that's a possibility, isn't it?
Water main breaks, yeah, that's a possibility. Anything's a possibility. But what we try to do is you're not going to replace all the water mains in the system unless you're willing to spend
$1 billion,
$100 million. What we try to do is we try to replace the mains in the areas that have limited the limitations, and then we also try to do it so that there are supporting mains that the fire department can go to in the event of a fire, so that not necessarily, like for instance, if there's a problem on Hampden Street, there's always Beacon Street. There's always an adjacent street that has a larger main. So that's the intent of what we're trying to do here, is that we're not trying to address and fix everything, but we're trying to fix worst-case scenarios and trying to provide the fire department with the ability so that if there is a fire, they're not going to have to go, more than 400 or 500 feet away to get to one of those high-capacity fire hydrants. So again, what we wanted to list here, we wanted to talk about also is some other streets that we really should consider, because this has brought to light the concerns of fire protection.
Is that in orange, the next ones?
The orange ones are other areas that are of concern.
All right, so there's a lot of orange.
But there's there's another 3 miles of pipe. You're looking at another $6.5 million. Now the question is, and that's why it's very important to bring that to your attention now.
All right, no,
Okay,
I appreciate it.
with this project does not, I don't want anybody to think that this $13.39 million is going to solve all the problems in the system. It's not. It's not. It's going to address the worst case scenario. There are still other areas that we identified originally in that first proposal that were not funded. And you really, this commission, I talked to the commission and they support me, and that really should be considered.
Just go on the mic, Kev.
Oh, I'm sorry. Dave, if you could you explain the importance of the orange pipe going down Main Street and why that's critical to the work for the yellow streets in the areas behind Dean?
Okay. I call this Jones Ferry, okay? Fire department will tell you there's not a lot of water here, okay? Under 1,000 gallons a minute.
Even though it's on the river, right?
Yep. The problem is you've got a primary line comes down, a 20-inch line, reaches Main Street, and it goes on Main Street just about to Hanover Street, 12-inch. Then it gets reduced down to 10-inch, which really the inside diameter of their pipe is about a 6-inch. Then it gets further reduced down to 8-inch until it reaches Ingleside Street. Then it gets increased back up to 12, where it goes past the school, the Dean School, and then it goes as far as Vincent Street and gets reduced back down to 8, and you got all 4s and 6s down there. So the problem is you've got this restriction here. So this is a critical component that's preventing us from getting volume down here. Now we can fix the side streets, but we can't get the volume down there until we fix this particular area. That's the case right here, and I know nobody wants to hear that, but the case with Dwight Street. You know Dwight Street?
Yeah.
Dwight Street is a 6-inch pipe. Very limited amount of water on Dwight Street. You really need to go as far as South Street to pick that up. There is very little water on Dwight Street. So that's another area, but it has supporting mains in particular areas.
So businesses down there, do they have low pressure?
Not low pressure, no. It's when you open a fire hydrant because of the.
We're only talking about fire hydrants.
Just talking about fire protection. Just talking about fire protection.
You need large quantities of water.
Right.
Large
Right.
quantity,
Right.
okay.
The people on Fairfield Avenue will tell you they're not going to have a problem with their water till somebody opens a fire hydrant. They're not going to have any water on their second story. It's going to go because there's no capacity there. There's pressure, but there's no capacity.
And I believe you told me there's 2,000 fire hydrants throughout the community.
There's about 1,500 public hydrants. There's a couple of hundred private hydrants, and then there's the hydrants out in the West Holyoke. So there's just under 2,000 fire hydrants.
Strategically placed throughout.
They're placed throughout. Now, there was questions that arose about the fire hydrants on Fairfield Avenue. Back in 1990, we replaced those hydrants. Those are all brand-new hydrants out there. Okay, now, I wouldn't say brand new. I would say within 20 years old.
So for the people at home, explain to them why there was no water when the fire happened.
When they opened the initial hydrant, very little water, a minimal amount of water came out, under 500 gallons a minute. Then they opened the second hydrant. That cut the flow in half between the two. Then they were forced to go to the nearest hydrant, which is high-capacity hydrant.
So the second one cut the flow, so it's because there's 2 of them open, so there's less.
Cut the flow, yep. Now, the fire department would consider that flow unoperational. Okay, but that's what you have. That's what you have on Fairfield Avenue.
Was there less than 500 gallons coming out of the second one?
You cut it in half.
So 250, okay.
Yeah, that's the problem. And that's the problem on Morgan Street, that's the problem on Pearl Street. In that whole particular area. Now, that was, when I brought that to the commission's attention, one of the remedial measures to address that, the concern was the distance. The high-capacity hydrant was away from those streets. they've instructed me to cut in 2 hydrants at the intersection of Morgan and Northampton Street and Fairfield and Northampton Street, so it limits the distance the fire department would have to go in the event of a fire before these improvements are completed.
Okay, so we do have a plan in place.
We have a plan in action that was voted on by this board last night.
Last night.
Right away.
Right away.
ASAP?
So for
ASAP.
Just go on the mic, Kev.
So for these areas, the commission has stated these two, instead of these also being part of the low flow problem, immediately cut these into the 12 so that these become fully operational at this point. These would become high service hydrants. We're looking at Morgan and Fairfield. Because one of the concerns of the commission is if you had a fire in, mid-block on Morgan in particular, you're looking at a long distance in order to get to a high service hydrant. So
Where would that be, hypothetically?
Well, want you.
Northampton Street or Pleasant Street? Or Lincoln Street.
Can the hoses do that, Chief? Yeah, they can reach that. Yeah. Would the hoses be able to go that far?
1,000 feet on each piece of apparatus. Typically, we connect to a hydrant, go 1,000 feet, put a pumper in, and run another 1,000 feet, relay pump.
But all that takes time.
A lot of time.
Takes time. That's why we use the initial water supply when we first get in there. The first pumper uses that, and then
Just go on the mic, Chief.
and then we go from there and we start bringing in water supplies like we did at Fairfield Ave.
Wow.
So by making these two hydrants cut in and operational off the 12 on Northampton Street, it would make those become high service hydrants, which would reduce that distance to any people in this area until the pipes are actually replaced under the bond.
You said that's going to be done ASAP, so what's the time frame do you think?
The hydrants, the time frame for the hydrants? Within the next 30 days.
Oh, within the next month.
Within the next 30 days. Contractor has to do that. We can't do that. We don't have the capability of doing that. We'll have a contractor do that. Now, as far as the work going forward,
10 grand a piece,
approximately, $10,000 to $15,000 a piece.
Yeah, I was going to say that's kind of a little money for that.
Yeah, exactly.
So, just so you understand, Phase 2 is going to be designed in the summer of 2020, and construction for Phase 2 is going to go forward 2021.
Is the orange phase 2?
The orange isn't even funded. It's not even funded. Just the yellow.
Oh.
That's what we wanted to bring to your attention. I already spoke to the mayor, and I have the mayor's full support. And he is willing to bring an authorization before the full city council for consideration of this additional work that we feel is critical. Now that these matters are before the city council, and say you have a little bit of an understanding of the importance of these projects.
Terry?
Yeah. First of all, thank you guys for coming and bringing this, and I'm very pleased to know that we have problems in my ward and obviously in other places, and I would tell you right now without any hesitation, if it's another $10 million to get every homeowner and every business the full capacity fire protection, then that's exactly what we should be doing, and we should be doing it as quickly as we can. And I would encourage the mayor to get that to us for our meeting on Tuesday, and let's go to work. Because, I know all of these, as all individual family homes, same kind of thing in here, and I know down here, I know this is gonna be done next year, right? After the CSO?
Yes.
Or in conjunction with the CSO?
In conjunction with the CSO.
But I know in fact, the chief has talked to me about Southeast Street already, that there were times he was going to not allow certain things unless there was major sprinkler systems because he couldn't have the capacity in terms of fire protection. So I appreciate you bringing all of this, and the map really lays it out visually so that it's clear to see. We've got a lot of work to do, and if we have to raise rates in the water rate to make sure that homeowners are protected, I don't think a homeowner is going to complain.
I'll turn it over to Councilor Bartley, but can you make a miniature map for all the councilors for Tuesday night? You don't have to do it now, but
Would something like this work? I have these right now. This has just what's been authorized.
I think, as Kevin said, the color quoted.
You want to?
Yeah,
You want all?
The orange, Dave.
It just pops out, and that makes it really tangible. Kevin?
Okay.
David, what was
Sorry.
what was the number on the orange?
We revisited the number as $6.5 million. In fact, I have this for you.
Well, money well spent.
All right, so we'll give this to Ryan, and he'll make a photocopy for all the councilors.
There's the breakdown of the 3 phases, and there's a breakdown of the additional work that that we feel is necessary.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
All right, this is for Ryan, make a copy. All right, David, Councilor Bartley?
Well, I have to ask Mr. Conti when he comes back. And I heard, thank you, Mr. Chair, for running a really good meeting, because I think you've been doing a great job. There's a lot going on here.
Appreciate that. There is.
Dave, and so I heard what Councilor Murphy said. Let's get the bond authorization to us right away. I heard that, because we've got emergency here. And I heard what you say about the mayor wants to push this right along. Right. So, I mean, do we have unlimited bonding capacity in this city?
No.
Is there, can we just bond? Because right now before us, we have potentially a debt exclusion override vote in which this body would potentially have to vote for $57 million in bonds. What's the mayor's position? Did that come up in your meeting with the mayor today? And what's the mayor's position? If that passes, he's behind that. He's advocating for it. In fact, I got a call today on a poll at home about that. So obviously there's political pressure behind this right now. So if that passes, what happens with this high priority project? I just heard Councilor Murphy say, let's get this done. Let's get this filed Tuesday, the multi-million-dollar bond. I need to know what impact this school has on, I mean, can we just keep passing bond authorizations? So what did the mayor, because he hasn't communicated anything to us, so what did he communicate to you relative to that potential vote?
My discussion with the mayor was specifically dealing with the water department and the water department only. And I had explained to him that a lot of these issues these areas that we're talking about, in addition to the original bond, were considered earlier, but there was concerns again about funding. So, but he assured me that if the water commissioners supported it and we felt, or I felt it was necessary to address the remaining major deficiencies. Now, like I said, this is not going to give you the perfect system. I don't want you to think that once we do this, everything is fixed, because it's not. But it addresses high priority projects, and it provides that redundancy that we need for the fire department, so that for these other areas that are going to need attention in the future, they have supporting fire protection around them. And he supports that. He supports that.
So bonds of this nature would mature when?
A bond of this nature would most likely, this additional work would probably be phase 4, possibly into phase 5. So we're looking at this work starting now and carrying out to 2024, 2025. So you're looking at 5 years from start to finish. You're looking at the city, the water department, the city's going to bond for it. The water department pays the city back, correct? So what we would do is we would come up with a rate increase schedule, and that would increase the rates at intervals along the 5 years, so that we reach the full rate increase by the completion of the project. So that's to try to minimize the impact to the consumers over the next 5 years. But when the city bonds or sells those notes, I'm not familiar with that.
That's important. That's important to consider, because your bonds have to be paid by the water rate increases. So that's something this body hasn't even thought about relative to all the other increases that are before us, in particular to the schools. So that's a separate increase as a tax override. Now we're going to add, sounds like very potentially add
$6.5 million.
Yeah, a significant increase to the water rates as well. Okay. So that's the point I want to make. Thanks,
and I'm not 100% sure, but you're looking at an 8-cent increase going to a 12 to 13-cent increase.
Thanks, Dave.
Chairman, if I could address that a little bit. Just on, and Councilor Bartley brings up a good point. We did discuss this when the $13.3 million was before the Finance Committee. We did have an initial discussion with the treasurer, and at one point we actually discussed it with our financial advisor, Cinda McNary. It's true, there's a capacity to bonding, and we look at when we looked in analyzed by Moody's or Wall Street or whatever. The total depth is part of what they analyze. But they also break it down as to who's responsible for paying the bond. When we bond and give permission for the water department to do projects, it's the water department who's paying for the bond. Similar to if we give permission to the gas and electric to bond, each entity cannot bond without the city council and mayor's approval. And it's analyzed as to the depth, this type of depth is looked upon as being paid through the water rate, which is always a consideration, paid through the gas and electric rates. And I think there's some concerns legit about total bonding capacity, but we do have to separate the type of bonds that they are and know that, outside of the water rate that we're trying to keep down, and the commissioners know when they come before us, because we've had that discussion plenty of times, Commissioner Jordan, about the water rate. And this is more about the water rate than about the total capacity of the city.
Probably what, about a 20, 25, 30% increase? Oh, 25, exactly. About a 25% increase in the water rate. That's what we're looking at? Yeah. Yep. Well, until the bond's paid.
You imagine what
Yes,
that,
right,
Yeah.
imagine what that
phased
does
in,
to the sewer rate.
Phased in, yeah.
If that's 25% of the water rate, just imagine what the sewer rate will be.
Yeah.
So you're gonna tell the homeowner what they're gonna pay is unbelievable.
Just the middle one part.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying that if that's the rate that goes through, and Councilor Bartley has made a good point. I mean, and David hasn't told you since I've been on this commission. David, just give a clue. How many pipes have we replaced?
There's been quite a few pipes replaced by this commission through grants. I mean, this city council was instrumental in helping me get the pipes replaced on Front Street as a part of the Lyman Terrace project. You familiar with that? Yeah. So there's been a lot of creative ways that we have been replacing pipes throughout the city. The High Performance Computing Center is one of them. That had no water. We were able to force that developer to put in new pipes. So the commission's been very creative in finding ways to try to address different areas through the city, but mostly through grants, some of it through our department operations, but we just don't have the resources to do anything of this nature. Fairfield Avenue alone is $970,000 to do that one street. Just to put that into perspective for you.
David, just to stay with the fire suppression topic, since you have 4 at-large counselors here, I think they'd appreciate also a discussion about the tanks, a discussion about the importance of the second tank. I think you should also illuminate the counselors about how many gallons goes into one of these fires and the need for, about West Holyoke, the importance of having the second tank. In the event that there was a fire in West Holyoke, that is already in the 13 million. You may want to mention that, and then also touch on the topic about flow testing the meters, and we're thinking about there could be a cost related to that as well. So you just want to touch on that as
The first issue.
comprehensive discussion of fire suppression.
First issue is, and this was something that I'm working with, communications with the fire department, that in the future, any fire that is reported, for the fire department to notify not only our on-call construction personnel, but also our on-call treatment personnel. And the reason that is necessary is that a fire of this nature, the tank levels dropped, and in the event of a fire, the water department can actuate the flow valve to increase the tank elevations to offset the drop in tanks as a result of the fire. Now,
back up and say that in
The water
English?
department, not the fire department.
what happens is when there's a fire, the tank elevations drop because
What tank? Where?
the high service tanks,
service.
the high service tanks next to the treatment plant, the water level drops, and as the water level drops, every time that water level drops a foot, we lose a half a pound of pressure through the system. Okay, what we have agreed to do is work together so that when there is a fire the next time, our personnel can go over there and open the valve and flood the tanks, fill the tanks while they're drawing water out to maintain that pressure in the system. So we calculated the amount of water that was used during the fire on Fairfield Avenue, and there was 730,000 gallons of water that was used to fight that fire. Now, I just wanted to put one thing into perspective. So The West Holyoke water system, we've requested $2 million to build a second tank for the West Holyoke area. Currently, the West Holyoke area, the entire West Holyoke area has one tank that supplies water to it. That tank has 500,000 gallons of storage. The pumps that fill that tank pump 600 gallons a minute. It gives you an idea. So, a fire of that nature, of that magnitude out in the West Holyoke area, that system could not handle that fire. That's the need to build the second tank, to give us the 1 million gallons of storage we need in the event of a major fire out in the West Holyoke area. That's the importance behind that project. So I just wanted to let you know, we talk about gallons. Consider the fire on Fairfield Avenue and consider the amount of water that was used, and then take into consideration how much we have for storage for the entire West Holyoke area, those 200 homes. That's the need to go forward with the second tank. And that tank has already been authorized, and that's going to take a year to build.
Well, that's already part of the bond?
13 million.
Already part of the $13 million bond, yes. Yes, that's the importance
Councilor
behind
Bacon
that
will be happy to
particular
hear
project.
this.
Yep. But these projects, they have to go through the permitting process, so you're going to see the construction of that tank in 2021.
Okay. Councilor Sullivan?
Sure. Dave, over the years, has the size of the staff of the water department shrunken, gone down?
It's been significantly reduced, and one of the reasons it's been reduced was because of the impacts of the bonds initially back in 1993, the $24 million that the department authorized for federally mandated projects. That had an impact of doubling of the rates, and at that time, the commissioners took steps to reduce staffing as a part of attrition and also minimize capital spending.
Got it.
So
if
yes, it does.
if back then, right, we hadn't decimated the water department, we had had a slight upward adjustment in the rate back then, that wouldn't have been necessary. Right? Okay.
More or less.
So because we went how many years without a rate increase?
Well, the rates were more than doubled as a result of those capital projects, more than doubled.
Sure.
And then there was this significant reduction in usage too.
Talk about prior to that, though. Prior to that, is that what you're saying?
I get it, but doubling something that's exponentially lower than any of the surrounding communities, maybe it should have been tripled back then.
Yeah.
All right? As a result of our decimating the water department, virtually all of this stuff that could have been done in-house ceased to happen. Anything we do now, all these millions that we're spending, you don't have the staff for it any longer. This is going to go out at prevailing wage now, right? Which, roughly speaking, means we're going to get half the bang for our buck. Is that a fair statement?
It's a lot more expensive to contract this type of work, but we still wouldn't have the ability to do some of this work even with an additional staff. It's
I get
beyond
that.
their capability, some of these pipes.
Some of them.
Some of them, but not the smaller ones. But you would have to assign somebody specifically. With a contractor, this work is going to get done relatively quickly. If our personnel were going to go out there and do it, it would stretch out over years. But with a contractor, this work could get done relatively quickly, minimal disruption to the neighborhood, minimal disruption to the area, because when we do this work, there's going to be a lot of valves that are going to be shut. There's going to be a lot of disturbances to the system.
Okay.
So you want to do that, and you want to do that as quickly as possible. So that's one of the, so yes, there is a cost associated with contracting the work, but there's also benefits associated with it.
Yeah. But we may have been able to not be at this point today had we been doing this for the last 30 years.
That's true. That's true.
Okay.
But again, there was also, just wanted to mention, there was also, the city was faced with a decline in usage too. So we had the doubling of the water rates, then you had the decline in usage, so you had more rate increases. So Holyoke's rates back in the 90s were not as attractive as they are today. Now we have some of the lowest rates of any community in the area. And that puts us in a better position to go forward with a lot of these projects and increase our rates so that we can address these deficiencies. But staffing is definitely an issue. Yes, our staff has been cut in half.
All right, and
Cut
just
in half.
in half, yeah. And just as far as the water rate and the sewer rate, a increase in the water rate doesn't necessarily necessitate an increase in the sewer rate. I see other cities where the sewer rate is at a percentage of the water rate. So it could be it's a simple formula to separate the two of them out. We could increase the water rate, and then the sewer rate becomes 75%. The sewer rate becomes 75% or 50% or 80%, whatever number is appropriate, to not change the sewer rate. That's something that could be done also. So one doesn't necessarily necessitate an increase in the other. And I think that's an important part for everybody to understand. Also, our current water rate, although yes, we have increased it, and there's been a lot of controversy about it. Yeah, it's a political football, it's a nightmare, but where are we compared to surrounding cities? From what I've seen, we're still, even with the rates we've put in place, anywhere from 30 to 40% below some of our surrounding neighbors.
That's true. That's true. That's true. This is actually the first time our rates are much cheaper than Chicopee's. And Chicopee has always had lower water rates than Holyoke. We have the lowest rates in the area, second only to Springfield. And Springfield's conducting a lot of infrastructure improvements too, so you're going to see their rate creeping up to ours. But yes, that's one of the positions this commission has enforced, is holding the rates steady and trying to conduct whatever improvements we can with the budget that they give me.
Yep, got it.
Just a quick question on that. So with losing a lot of valuable employees, what are we doing about retaining the institutional knowledge that is getting lost? Are younger people getting trained by the older people? Because I'm sure God forbid, like when you go, or when Bill Filgway left, we have to make sure people are getting trained. Like in any private corporation, you bring people on and you put them with the older people, or I should say older people with more years of experience, and they gain knowledge. Are we doing that now in the water department?
When the bonds matured in 2017, the board allowed me to hire some individuals so that we could fill in some staffing requirements for grounds maintenance and construction. And now we're working on treatment. We lost Henry Seidel, which was a tremendous loss, 35 years of experience, and we just lost Dave Pulowski. He's indicated his retirement, and that's another 70 years of experience there, and it's going to be hard to replicate that. So, but we do have a talented young staff coming on board, and we're training them, and we're going to be hopefully getting some new individuals that are educated, that can take this department to the next century. So
hypothetically, if you could have your ways, and I understand money's an issue, we have to look at that, but we always talk about a full complement for the fire department. We always talk about a full complement for the police department. And we try to make sure that we have as many firefighters as that complement, and police officers as well. What would your complement, what would your staffing needs be if we were looking at the fire department or the police department, where we give a fixed number?
It's kind of a loaded question.
No, yes.
I mean, in the perfect world, I'd love to have two crews. I'd love to have a fire hydrant crew or a hydrant maintenance crew, a meter crew, have more staff up at the treatment plant. But I'm a realist, and I understand there's constraints involved. So I think this commission's been very good with me in allowing me to hire the people that I feel are critical to the operation. And for the most part, I think our staffing, with the exception of maybe a couple of more individuals, we should be able to function effectively. We have a lot of talented people that are multifunctioned, multiple licenses that can do different tasks, and I think cross-training is very important at this point in time. The days of having a laborer, a piper, a backhoe operator, a truck driver, those days are over. We have one individual that can do everything, and that's the thought process that we have. Everybody is cross-trained to do everybody's job. So, and having the equipment to do the job, that's all important.
You guys do a good job. You and your commissioners do a fantastic job. I
just want to make sure. I think I've got it, so based on all the information we have now, what you laid out there, the $6 million and the $13 million we've already done, you would anticipate that for the next 20 years, that should cover our water main issues, our fire safety issues, our water quality issues, so that, you know, I just want to make sure whatever we're going to do to resolve this issue is going to be what we've resolved the issues for the next 20 years. Obviously, unforeseeable things can happen, but for the most part, we've said this is a 20-year plan, and we will be set with this in terms of all of those quality issues, fire safety, water quality, and the rest. I just want to make sure that's what I'm hearing.
That's correct. That's correct. I feel very comfortable with the funds that you have given me to undertake those projects under the $13.39 million, and with the additional $6.5 million, that should address all my major concerns throughout the distribution system. But understand there is still looming that filtration that we have to obtain a waiver for annually. So that at any time could be triggered. So that is the only other mandate I see within the next 20 years. But I think that was the intent, is bonding this, and that would put the department in good shape for the next, like you said, 20 years. In addition to the work that we continue to do every single year. And I don't want you to think that we talk about hydrant maintenance. We try to replace on an average, which we do, 5 hydrants every year, and we repair anywhere from 20 to 40 hydrants. That's just with our own personnel. There's also hydrants that are being installed by private contractors. Anytime a development becomes before my office, fire department, we always require them to upgrade surrounding hydrants if necessary. Case in point, Library Commons. They're going to be putting a new water main on Chestnut Street, fire protection there. That's going to be, that's going to help improve Chestnut Street, which is a problematic area right now. So we're always trying to find creative ways to improve fire protection in addition to what we can do with our own personnel.
And one last, and I think, and this is just a comment to the commission, and I've read your minutes in the last couple, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, and I think I got it with a bill, that you created kind of an insurance program for homeowners?
Yes.
So that they aren't, if they should have an accident, they're not gonna end up, or some kind of water main, they aren't gonna have to be paying $5,000 out of their account.
Explain that.
And if I can, I want to.
Sure, go ahead.
I want to say, because David was there way back when I was an alderman, Mr. McGivern. I know I had a couple of people that had the same kind of thing, and back then it was being suggested. So I really commend you for putting that together. I think that's a great plan. It's going to be a small few dollars for everybody, but it protects everybody so that someone's not going to have a $5,000 expense.
Yeah, thank you, Councilor Murphy, for bringing that up. I think the commission, and with Dave's tremendous work, just does a fantastic job as the manager and his staff. But yeah, to outline it, particularly for the residential customers, what this outlines is the commission approved a new insurance program, $4 per quarter, so $16 per year. You have any issue from all the way out to the street, through your lawn, to the meter, any of these issues, you have any break, whatever, replacing the meter, all 100% covered. I mean, just imagine the cost of having to dig up your front lawn and go down and fix that type of issue. Big. I mean, you're talking thousands and thousands of dollars. So to have that type of peace of mind for $16 a year, you never have to have any worry about, your water service or any of the costs.
I think it's a great decision.
Yeah, I
just want to commend you for that. I thought I read it right. And
you read it right.
I did.
You read it right. Yep.
It seems like a no-brainer. I can't imagine somebody not taking advantage of that, right?
Well, we made it, in order to keep the cost down, we made it mandatory that everybody has to participate, because our fear also, just from common sense perspective, was if somebody said, no, I don't want it, and then they're the one that has the problem, they're going to say, well, I didn't understand. I would have given you the $16, and now when they're looking at a $5,000 bill, they're going to be like, well, you didn't explain it. So we just made it real user simple. Everybody gets the protection, and they pay the $16. End of story.
Joe? Yeah, Councilor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Two things. One, David and commissioners, thank you. Anytime you come before us, it's incredible the knowledge, especially of the manager, but the commissioners certainly are responsible for the manager, but I think sometimes it works the other way, doesn't it? But we appreciate it, and I understand Because when we went just earlier this year and even over the years, we understand the age of the pipes in the city. Water is for free. Distribution is what costs. And your job is to get the water to our homes, to our businesses, and water for use for the fire department for the safety of all our property. I appreciate it. For the record, yeah, my support on the additional $6 million. Not going to go as far as Councilor Murphy, where he said open check, but definitely that $6 million should have been included, I think, originally with the $19 million. Maybe our mistake, not your mistake, that we should have pushed you to do it more. And I think we can work with the rates and still be able to do it in a reasonable, cost efficient fashion. I got one more question, but it's for the chief. But David, I got one caveat with my support. And Commissioner Harbless told me this, is you will not mention retirement of yourself until this is done. Got it?
done.
Okay? The entire city.
So we're going to keep coming up with new projects,
Yes.
so he can never retire. See, it's when all
You
the
are not
projects are
retiring.
complete, that's when he's allowed to leave.
I second
so
the
we're going
motion.
to start a new one.
Yeah. My other question, just to redirect to Chief Pond. Chief, thank you, and I think your fire department is second to none when it comes to the job that you do. I was around, Terry was around, Jimmy might have been too, when the earlier this evening, David talked about the color coding of fire hydrants so that the fire department, when they responded, wouldn't know what they had in terms of pressure for each fire department, for each fire hydrant. Is that still working, and do our new firefighters, are they trained to understand the importance of that and how to react to that when they come upon a fire?
Yes, that's still in operation. That was 25 years ago when that system was put in place. So we respond initially to the fire scene. The first engine goes in and they take the nearest hydrant. They start operating off the water they have in that area. And then when more water's needed for that fire, incoming apparatus will connect to those hydrants with the white caps to get more capacity into that location, which is what happened in Fairfield Ave. We went down to Nonotuck, had to stretch, a couple thousand feet to the fire, but it works. Some water is better than no water. We had less than 500 gallons in that one hydrant, but we had some water.
I noticed a
initially
picture
start
in
with,
the paper, Mass Live, of a retired firefighter that was leading the charge with that hose. Only Jordan could find the camera that quick, right? I read also in the article, though, and I meant to call you, but I seem to get the impression from reading one of the articles that one of the fire hydrants on Fairfield Avenue broke. Is that different from the water pressure, or was it just a way of describing there was no water pressure?
There was no water pressure. My understanding is that they opened up, they had water already going, then they opened up another hydrant on the same line on that Fairfield Ave street. So they realized they were taking water from the initial connection, so they tried to shut it down. They couldn't shut it down, and the stem broke on that one as they were trying to shut it down, so they just capped it off.
Compounded the issue.
So then that was solved. That's the hydrant that has the out of service because the water department went in right away and fixed it. That's whenever we have a problem, we contact the water department. They take care of stuff for us all the time.
Are you on a GPS, or how do you guys know where all the hydrants are?
We have street books. We also have hydrant maps in our book, and Mr. Conti just shared with us a pretty comprehensive layout of the pipe system in the city that we put in all of our apparatus on the iPads.
So the communication's perfect now, so if you go to any street in the city of Holyoke, you're gonna know if this is a good hydrant or if it's a low producing water one?
We'll look at the main size. We'll try to grab anything 8 inches or above and use that in that area because it's all different sizes.
Chief, with winter almost upon us, would you like to make an announcement of what homeowners can do when snow accumulates above a fire hydrant?
Well, you should shovel out the hydrant closest to your property or in front of your property because we've had times in the city where we would show up and we couldn't find the hydrant to be buried under snowbanks, and that's going to slow us down from getting water on your house to put out the fire in your house. So I would suggest that homeowners shovel out the hydrants closest to their house or in front of their house. It would be very helpful, not only for us, but for them to save their property.
See, Michael, that's even better than a robocall. We do public service announcement in the city council chambers.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Dave, do you have another statement? Just get on the mic. Sure, shoot.
This is the hydrant that they had an issue with not being able to shut down. The problem was the O-ring down in the seat. So when they called the water department, our employee went out there and they took it out of service. When we take it out of service, we put a ring around the pumper, says hydrant out of service.
saw that, out of service.
And it's repaired the next day. But to satisfy the concerns of the residents that we went out that night, we checked every hydrant. Every hydrant on Fairfield Avenue is functional. All the hydrants in the city, we test. We test, and I can't account for the ones in the private sectors though, but all the public hydrants are checked and tested and operational.
Isn't there a hydrant right across the street on the old Skinner Mansion? It's up the hill, off Northampton Street. I remember going door to door there, and I remember seeing a hydrant. It's right next to a dam, I think.
Yeah, I don't.
All right.
But I just wanted you to know that was what the problem with the fire hydrant. The hydrants that we have out there are all fully functional, and they're relatively new. They were all put in. Another issue, a means of kind of improving the fire department's ability to identify fire hydrants and mains is this GIS map that we have, this ArcGIS map. We now have conveyed that map to the fire department. They have that on all their laptops, and they actually can have them on their phones now.
Well, they can.
So they will have the ability to see the water system on their phone, on their laptops, and on their desktops. Now, it does give them the size of the mains and the location of the fire hydrants. It doesn't give them the capacity. Okay, and that's where there's going to be, we talked about refreshing our training with the fire department and kind of, identifying areas in the city until these improvements go forward that have these concerns with regards to capacity.
And there's a call plan in place.
Yes.
Where there's a fire.
Yes.
They're going to be calling somebody on duty.
Yes, to call them directly. 2 people, one to maintain tank elevation, second to be present at the fire, because after the fire, we like to check the hydrants, make sure they drain properly, make sure they're closed properly so that we don't have any issues with them in the future.
Council, I did want to also mention one other thing is, and I know the fire department does a very comprehensive job on pre-planning for fires and various fire emergencies. I know David and the water department will make itself available for any trainings that the fire department wants. John is just mentioning, I know you guys do a lot of work on pre-planning and strategy in terms of what-if scenarios that were to happen. I just want you to know that the commission feels very strongly that if you need David to come in for a training on an annual basis or whatever level of frequency to go through, various contingencies or things like that, the water department's available as well.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, if I could make a suggestion, we talked about this earlier. With a little bit of time we have left, I would suggest that maybe we open up the mic if there are any members of the public that might want to come in and ask a question.
Second the motion. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Does anybody else in the audience have any questions, comments?
Jim, could I say something? Of course. Yeah, I want to thank the water commissioner coming down here and David for the work you've done and the rapport I've had with David over the years. Any issues I've had with any of the water system, he's very, very helpful to me. And thank the commission too for trying to get those pipes and those hydrants up there right away within 30 days. I think that's going to be a real helpful to the people in that neighborhood to know that. And I'm also, and I'm only one vote, but I'm also in favor of the additional improvements within the systems, especially in the Main Street area, Hampden Street, Dwight Street. I think that's important to get those done. I think we can work that out with the water rates in time. I mean, I know it's a burden on people, but I think people are willing to pay the cost a little bit more to have that protection in those areas in the neighborhoods that they need it. So I want to thank the commission for coming down here, and I've learned a lot tonight just from the maps and from what we need to do to keep our water service strong and to replace the pipes and the hydrants, and so that the public knows that we're working on this issue, and that it'll be something that they'll feel a little bit more comfortable with, knowing that the council is and the commission is really working hard on this to do immediately. So thank you so much for coming down.
Good summary, Peter. I will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, make a motion that the items 5, 6, and 7 have been complied with. We report that back to the full city council with the request of the manager of the water department for looking into the additional $6 million.
I second the motion. All in favor? Aye. Ayes have it. So I want to thank everybody for coming down here tonight, especially the counselors, Chief, and all you guys. Respect you guys all. You guys do a great job. All of you guys do. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having us down.
Yeah, have a good night.
Jim?
Motion to support.
Jim, Marco's here. Marco's back for that. He wants to come in.
Oh, we voted on you.
I understand, good evening.
Go to the microphone, sir.
Yeah.
Just informational purposes only, because we've concluded this meeting, but I had a local historic commission. Yeah. Are there any questions or anything that I can respond to, or anything I need to?
Just the mic. We couldn't hear you. The mic's, I don't know if it's on or not.
Councilor Sullivan gave a kind of a good interpretation of your.
There's a button there, Marco, on the mic somewhere. I don't think
Hey,
we can hear you,
thank
so
you
the
very
public
much.
can hear you.
Okay,
go ahead.
Thank you. Take care. Kevin, thank you so much.
Marco, I think the fact that you left this meeting to go to a meeting that you're looking
Come
to
back,
become a permanent member of speaks for itself, and you have my support, and I believe you have the support of the full city council.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. If there are any questions, please let me know.
Yeah, we appreciate it. Thank you so much and good luck.
Thank
you.
Thank you.
Actually, so you know, we're going to go to our city council meeting. Mike Sullivan will give a brief report. Then we'll vote on it. I see there's going to be no issues. And then after the full city council meeting, the following day, you can go to the city clerk or any day after and get sworn in. Simple as that. So we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.